Okay, let's jump right into today's explainer. We're stepping back in time to unpack literally the most gruesome and definitely the most enduring true crime mystery in American history. It's a case that has generated decades of wild headlines, sparked endless series, and totally frustrated the most seasoned detectives. We're talking, of course, about the 1947 murder of Elizabeth Short, forever known to the world as the Black Dahlia. So ask yourself, what kind of killer leaves a 22-year-old woman surgically bisected and completely drained of blood in a quiet neighborhood lot? To really wrap our heads around the sheer magnitude of this mystery, I need to transport you to the chilling morning of January 15th, 1947. Just picture walking down Norton Avenue. It's a quiet, middle-class street, and right there, lying in a vacant lot, was a scene so incredibly horrific and baffling that it instantly triggered the largest police manhunt in Los Angeles history. Section 1. The Gruesome Discovery, Leimert Park, Los Angeles. What made this murder so unique and honestly so deeply unsettling was the absolute barbarity of the crime scene. Elizabeth Short's body was found completely nude and had been cleanly severed in half right at the waist. In this chilling display of clinical precision, she'd been entirely drained of blood. Her face was brutally mutilated, with cuts running ear to ear, creating a horrific Glasgow smile. But alongside this disturbing cleanliness was just absolute defilement. Her rose tattoo had been sliced off, and the autopsy actually revealed feces in her stomach and lower intestine. This wasn't just a murder. It was a carefully orchestrated, torturous desecration clearly committed by someone with significant anatomical knowledge. Section 2. Who was Elizabeth Short? Unmasking the Black Dahlia. You know, for nearly 80 years, Elizabeth's real life has been buried under a mountain of tabloid sensationalism. The media immediately painted her as this promiscuous Hollywood wannabe, a wild party girl who tragically flew too close to the sun. But the reality? It was vastly different, and so much sadder. Elizabeth, who originally came from Massachusetts, was really just a naive drifter. Friends described her as a loner carrying this deep sadness about her. She had zero acting career. Actually, after a romantic disappointment, she basically became economically and emotionally dependent on complete strangers. She was constantly moving between cheap lodgings and just accepting dinners from soldiers she'd meet on street corners. Initially, of course, she was just a Jane Doe. But on their second attempt, police sent an enlarged photograph of her fingerprints to the FBI. And it turns out, because Elizabeth had previously worked as a civilian employee at a U.S. Army base in California, her prints were securely on file. The FBI analyst was finally able to put a name to the victim: 22-year-old Elizabeth Short. Section 3. A massive, cold investigation. The LAPD's bungled dragnet. The LAPD immediately cast this massive net, borrowing hundreds of officers from other agencies. But when you retrace her final days, there's a really dark gap. In the autumn of 1946, she was drifting. Her very last confirmed sighting was on January 9th, 1947, making phone calls from the lobby of the Biltmore Hotel. And then, from January 9th to the 14th, she simply vanished. Because her stomach was full and there was no loss of fecal matter when she died, detectives realized something terrifying. She had been fed and held captive alive for several days. They started desperately searching for a private death house, some completely isolated location where the killer could take his time to torture and mutilate her without anyone interrupting. In their dragnet, the police questioned literally everyone. Her father, guys from the army base, previous boyfriends. The immediate focus fell on a red-haired salesman named Robert Manley, mostly because he was the last person seen dropping her off at the Biltmore Hotel. But Manley passed a lie detector test, and he actually had an ironclad alibi for the night her body was dumped, so he was officially cleared. What's truly chilling about this case is how the killer treated the whole horrific event like a twisted game. Just over a week after the body was found, a person claiming to be the killer contacted the local newspaper. They mailed a package directly to the Los Angeles Examiner, and inside were Elizabeth Short's personal belongings, including her birth certificate and an address book. The torso killer was actively taunting the press and the police. Section 4. The prime suspects: morticians and surgeons. Let's look at the suspects. One of the earliest viable ones was a guy named Leslie Dillon. He was a former mortician, which is huge because it meant he possessed the exact embalming and anatomy training required to drain a body of blood and surgically alter it. In 1949, Dillon started writing these bizarre letters to the LAPD trying to blame the crime on a friend named Jeff Connors.
A police psychiatrist named J. Paul DeRiver became incredibly preoccupied with Dillon, eventually theorizing that Dillon actually suffered from multiple personality disorder, and that Jeff Connors was just his violent alternate identity.
But then another name emerged that cast a much, much darker shadow over Hollywood: Dr. George Hill Hodel. Hodel was this brilliant, prominent orthopedic surgeon, so obviously he possessed the intricate anatomical skills necessary to bisect a human body. But he also had a very dark history. He'd been accused of severe sex crimes, including an incest trial involving his own teenage daughter, Tamar. The Los Angeles district attorney actually considered him such a prime suspect that in 1950, an 18-man task force secretly planted live microphones right inside the walls of his Hollywood home.
Notice the eerie resemblance here. On the left, you have an altered sketch mailed to police by someone claiming to be the killer. On the right, a photograph of Dr. George Hodel. Plus, the sender of these taunts possessed handwriting that, according to Hodel's own son, perfectly matches Dr. Hodel's distinctly blocky print.
And you have to listen to this terrifying transcript from that secret 1950 DA wiretap. Sitting in his bugged home, completely unaware he's being recorded, Dr. Hodel says, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary because she's dead. They thought there was something fishy. Anyway, now they may have figured it out. Killed her. Maybe I did kill my secretary." I mean, it is an almost unbelievable admission caught right on tape.
Furthermore, the killer apparently had a real penchant for anniversaries and dates. Years later, an anonymous taunting letter was mailed to the sheriff's office regarding the Black Dahlia case. The postmark on that envelope was October 10th, 1950. Well, October 10th happens to be the exact date of birth on Dr. George Hodel's birth certificate. It was this direct, highly specific taunt essentially saying, "Catch me if you can."
Section 5. The enduring mystery, sealed files, and unanswered questions. So what happened? Well, just 5 weeks into the electronic surveillance, and shortly before pending arrest, Dr. George Hodel simply fled the country, relocating to the Philippines. And because they couldn't definitively prove Hodel and Short had ever even met, the LAPD ultimately cleared him. Decades later, Hodel's own son, Steve Hodel, who, crazily enough, grew up to be an LAPD homicide detective himself, discovered all this evidence. He has spent years actively investigating his late father, totally convinced he's a prolific serial killer, responsible not just for Elizabeth Short's death, but several others. Yet despite massive public interest, tons of books, and compelling circumstantial evidence, the case is officially ice cold. And honestly, here's the most frustrating part. Nearly 80 years later, the LAPD continues to deny thousands of public record requests. They absolutely refuse to release the unredacted 1947 case file. They won't even release Elizabeth Short's complete autopsy report to her surviving family. It's widely believed to be the only autopsy report in Los Angeles County history suppressed from the public for this long.
Which leaves us to ponder this final, provocative thought. Elizabeth Short was a 22-year-old girl whose life was violently stolen, and his legacy was completely hijacked by tabloid sensationalism. But after almost 8 decades, long after every single investigator and suspect has passed away, what exactly is the LNPD still hiding in those unredacted files? Why protect the secrets of a murder from 1947? Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep questioning what lies beneath the surface.